afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of COVIDCastJA. My name is Rochelle Cameron. I am your host, and this afternoon we are joined by three very busy men, two more busy than others. Hi, Nevada. Nevada is joining us online on Zoom. Nevada is the lead project architect for the PSOJ Access to Finance Panel program, a program that has now pivoted to take into consideration the many issues that are affecting our small, medium enterprises across Jamaica during this pandemic. We are joined by Maurice Barnes, and I'll ask Maurice to introduce himself, and John Thompson. So Maurice, introduce yourself please to our audience.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maurice Barnes. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of eGOV Jamaica Limited, which is an agency of the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology.
John.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Thompson. I'm the COVID-19 Care Program Manager with the Ministry of Finance and Public Service.
Okay. So we had promised you last week that we would have persons who would be able to speak about the government's care program, a program that was announced in March of this year, post the pandemic, and the portal was opened last week, April 9th. And in fact, let me start with Maurice, because I think a lot of Jamaicans aren't fully aware that the portal for COVID, for the COVID care program, did not exist before. No. That it was in fact built locally.
From
Tell
scratch.
us a little bit about what eGOV has done over the last few weeks to get us ready for April 9th.
Right. So we actually started this engagement. Was a call from the program manager, from John, approximately 3-4 weeks ago.
No, 21 days ago.
21 days ago. Yes, 3 weeks ago, actually, yes. And we were told about the program, and the fact that they wanted it to be fully electronic, fully automated, etc. Certainly, based on the times that we're in right now with this pandemic, having a system online would definitely be the way to go. So we took on the challenge, and we said that what we could do is look at even phasing in the project, because we know we had a strict cutoff date of the 9th, and we immediately engaged a team. I mobilized that team. It's a team of about 18 persons from eGOV Jamaica, basically covering the gamut of business analysts, software designers, developers, etc. So we had a full project team.
Locally?
All locally. These are all members of my staff. And we just got down to work. I told the staff that, listen guys, we just have to batten down for the next 2 weeks and make this happen. And we did. In record time.
It is. I think it should be applauded that as Jamaicans we are able to build sophisticated systems in short periods of time to meet programs and projects that have national impact, because this is so important. So this could not be a project that could be for a portal to be launched in June of this year.
No.
This had to be done quickly.
Correct.
So the man at the helm of the project is a gentleman, John Thompson. And John, I do not envy you, because I'm sure you have not slept. Neither have you, Maurice. I have slept for several weeks now.
Yeah.
Can you give us a bit of background of the project? We know the minister had made the announcement, and what went in the background operationally to get us to where we are now?
So having the WeCare system operational was not just a matter of getting the software functional. There are supporting elements of the program that all had to come in place and be operational on the 9th. And these were having a communications program in place, having call center support, having a toll-free number in place, having SMS messaging services in place, and most importantly, and perhaps most challenging, getting harmonization on the policies in terms of how the system would, how the program would work.
Okay.
Because in government programs, it can be a bit challenging to have everybody on board and agreeing that these are the benefits that are applicable for this component. And that, if I just to say, that was one of the challenging aspects that you know is typical in government projects. I have done it before, but yes, quite a number of pieces had to come in place to be operational on the 9th. So, for example, the call center company was trained just one day before. So you know, and they were able to handle 10,000 calls on the first day. So you know, everything. It's as you said. It's for the 21 days, I don't think Maurice and myself, we got much sleep, but we both have some kind of experience in this type of delivery before, so yeah, luckily for us, it all worked out.
So we actually want to start the program on a really positive note, because I think as Jamaicans, sometimes we don't stop to actually celebrate when we're able to make a commitment to the public and actually get that commitment met without any extensions. Exactly. So congratulations to both your teams.
Thank you. And by the way, and it was a very large team as well, not just eGOV, but you have the Minister of Finance from a policy perspective, the Accountant General, and Tax Admin Jamaica. So it's a multi-organization team.
Yeah. So during this time, we do have to recognize that there are many persons who have to be working behind the scenes to ensure that these various things have come into place, and we are really grateful. Gentlemen, can I get a number of the applications? How many applications have come in to date? What's the latest figures you have?
The latest I have for the overall program is probably what, 460,000.
That's correct.
Yeah.
460,000.
Yes.
Applications.
In excess of.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we see most of these applications in what? How do we see them divided?
Right. So in terms of the programs, where we're seeing the majority of the applications are in the compassionate grant program, and that is almost at 400,000.
So the bulk of it is for compassionate
That's
grant.
correct.
And this is for tertiary students, pensioners, the elderly,
and unemployed.
And
persons.
unemployed.
Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
So just to get an idea from you, John, in terms of the various programs, we've had 467,000 applications. So there have been several successful applications.
That's correct.
Where persons would have received a reference number.
So yeah, every applicant receives a reference number, which is confirmation that you do in fact have an application in place.
Okay. So tell me, are there persons who haven't received a reference number? What issues are people facing at the outset with applications?
The primary reason we have encountered is, it's hard to believe, but there are many persons who, for whatever reason, they do not know their correct spelling of their name or the date of birth. For your TRN to be validated on the system, the first name, last name, and date of birth must be exactly as it is when you receive your TRN. And that continues to be one of the lingering problems. There are persons apparently with different birth dates and so on. So that I would say is, once we had settled down, because on the first day we did have our hands full, we actually received over 165,000 applications.
On the first day?
On the very first day. You know, 1/3 of the applications came in on the first day. And it's funny, we were at work at 12:01, Maurice, and we could see persons. We saw over 1,600 persons trying to submit an application at 1 minute after 12 on the 9th. So yes, but once we settled, and we did have some little challenges that a lot of it having to do with the load that was put on the system on the first day. But if I am to look back, I think the only lingering issue we have, which unfortunately we are not able to address, is persons, for whatever reasons, they do not know how their name was spelled or what birthday they used on registration.
So the spelling of names and your date of birth, I will not judge, because sometimes I can't remember how to spell my middle name, so I won't judge. Nevada, let me bring you in at this time. We've heard about the issue with TRNs and date of birth. On the ground, what have you been hearing from our SMEs in regard to the application process? And just to mention again, viewers, we've had over 460,000 applications. the majority of the applications being for the compassionate grants.
Right.
So we are seeing actually less applications for small business grants, etc. Nevada, let me bring you in. What are you hearing?
Well, it's interesting that the vast majority, not unexpected, of the applications is in the compassionate grant. Because I think what you notice with the compassionate grant, the barriers to entry, let's say, are relatively low. Some of the SMEs we're hearing from struggle with some of the issues that are being asked. I will give you an example. In one of the tourism grants, there's an expectation that they would do a financial projection around their business. But imagine, for example, you are a craft shop owner whose business is very contingent on the arrival of a cruise ship. Now, the government is asking for a projection for my business, to cover my business. But think about the number of things that I cannot control. For example, when will airports and travel in general be open again? Even after that's happened, how many people are going to be comfortable getting on a cruise ship, knowing that a cruise ship is in a situation where people don't feel a cruise ship is a petri dish? So the issue with things like that is, given what some of the businesses are required to do, is that possible? Is that reasonable? Or is it just doing stuff in the air? That's one set of things. The other thing we're hearing about, and of course nobody's sitting at this table, anybody here is with many of the businesses haven't done all the taxing that they should have done. And there have been even situations, for example, where there may have been employees whose the deductions were taken from their salary, but through working capital constraints or whatever it is, the business didn't necessarily hand it over to the tax authority. So now we have a situation where employees who think they should be able to, and in fact are justifiably able to get some kind of payment, benefit, actually can't because of things that they didn't do. So again, the business situation, the compassionate grant is quite easy, and the requirements are quite easy to overcome. When you hit the business requirements, put up against the reality of how we do business on the ground, it's more complicated. The third thing that we've heard a lot about is some of the pre-registration stuff that's required. For example, TBD-CO. We have heard from many of our SMEs, they have tried to register with TBD-CO, but some of them tried for years. The combination of the way the process was, the way the time it took, things expired before they got to the next stage, all kinds of things made it impossible. And even though they're looking now and saying, could I possibly try and do it in the 15 days, 30 days left to become registered, it don't look so good. So question broadly in all of this is, how do we think about the business applications and growing those, given the fact that the barriers to registering for the business applications are obviously much higher than the compassionate ones?
Okay, so just to clarify, there's a product called Tourism Grant, which is specifically to enable tourism-related business to recover. It is going to be managed by the Jamaica Tourist Board related entities.
Yes.
Applications have not been taken yet for the tourism grant.
Okay, and so that's a specific tourism grant.
And that's for specific tourism-related entities. And that means entities who are registered with TPDCO. So there is still room for persons to apply if they are in the tourism sector. Of course, you will have to, by May, have a sense as to what this will look like. The requirements are not as onerous. It basically calls for TPDCO registration, tax compliance, some kind of financial statement, and a business recovery plan. And although the terms have not been ironed out as yet, the grant could be substantial because we recognize that there are many entities who will need assistance in getting back once the markets open.
Okay.
So let's not mix up the tourism grant with the other types of grants that there
because
are.
it will be the monetary value of those have the potential to be substantially different.
More. They will.
But in terms of
Small business.
So yeah. So I just wanted to make sure there's a clear understanding of the grants.
Yes.
Now there's a product called, if I can call it.
Sorry, John, just on that, for the TBDQ, if you've started the process but not completed, so you're not yet registered but you've created the first step in the registry, would you be eligible, or it's only people who are already registered?
Yes, it's only persons who are registered, and unfortunately the registration closed, is it today the 15th, or is it closed on the 15th of April? So we did in fact give some leeway for persons to be TPD co-registered.
So have persons been attempting that registration process?
Oh yes.
What about the feedback? Have they been actually getting through that registration process?
I can't say for sure, but I have seen the list, and there are a substantial number of entities and persons who are in fact registered with TPDCO. In fact, I saw over 1,444 craft vendors. So, which leads me to the next point. There is the component called general grant.
Okay.
Gives a benefit for self-employed individuals, and that includes those in the tourism sectors. The raft captain, the golf caddy, the jute driver, craft producers, and those typically can get a benefit of $40,000. And I don't think the requirements are onerous there. I don't recall if there was any tax requirement or not.
Well, there was a registration for the barbers and hairdressers.
So I'm going to come to that.
So
I was just dealing specifically with the tourism one.
And the craft vendors, I'm seeing that they must be jute, maxi, and JCAL operators who must be registered with TPDCO by April 30.
Yes. April 30?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, and then on the general grant deals with the occupational types of self-employed persons, as we've said, the raft captain, caddy, the jute driver. There's another set of professionals or semi-professionals who are municipality registered, barbers, hairdressers, cosmetologists, market vendors, and so on. And they also can benefit under the general grant. There's an occupation there that they would select. And there are two more categories on the general grant. There's one for early childhood practitioners.
Oh, so there is one for early childhood.
And there is one for entertainment practitioners.
Okay.
So in fact, there are 19 professions enumerated and listed. You can keep this on the general grant. So the minister did come up with a broad-based program in terms of trying to cater to not just.
And just so that our viewers know what I'm also looking at, for the general grant, just a reminder, we're looking at persons who are airport red cap, barbers, bar operators, beauty therapists, bus operators, club license owners, cosmetologists, craft vendors, craft producers, early childhood educators, because I know we did get a question on Facebook in regard to someone who runs a basic school, entertainment practitioners. That's who? Singers, dancers?
Yeah, so because what in the tourism industry in particular, you had a lot of entertainment practitioners who were not part of a formal payroll system. And so they would not have been able to benefit on the set cash, which is where typically persons who are displaced would benefit.
So
it's not just TPD core, but general practitioners.
Yep, so we're looking at persons who are in the tourism industry. We're also looking at persons who are in occupation, self-employed occupations, such as cosmetologists, hairdressers, barbers, entertainers, etc. Now, people usually choose the path of least resistance, and we do note that there are 400,000 persons who have registered for the compassionate grant. When we're looking at the general grant, what kind of take-up are we seeing for the general grant?
The general
grant is one where barbers, hairdressers, the occupational one.
That one is just over 5,000.
Just over 5,000.
5,000.
And we're seeing most of the applications from what types of occupations?
The occupations, the taxi drivers, that would be the PPV.
So the majority.
And taxi operators.
So for the taxi operators, they would already have been registered with transport
authorities.
It's very easy for them.
It's easier for them.
It's easier for them, that's
So
correct.
are we finding then that we're not seeing as many cosmetologists, hairdressers, and barbers who are registering?
The numbers are around for the cosmetologists are about 1,000.
Yeah.
For the barbers, a little over 500.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the issues that we are seeing persons who are in those occupations? What kind of issues are they seeing?
Well, they are having issues really related to the municipality or ministry that would have done their registration.
Okay.
The complaint I hear is, I went and did my test. For barber, they have to meet some requirements in terms of health and so on. They may have done the test 2 months ago and they still haven't been issued their registration certificate, etc. But for that category, and that is the precise reason why we extended the deadline to April 30th for barbers, cosmetologists, and market vendors. The municipality registered practitioners, we recognize that there was some delay there. So unlike the TPD code that was cut off yesterday, the municipality entities have been extended to April 30th.
Okay. And this is expected to facilitate more persons being registered to be able to get the grant. Do we find that persons may have actually just said, I can't bother, let me just apply for the compassionate grant and say I'm unemployed?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I suspect a lot of that has happened.
Yeah.
Even persons under the set cash, may have opted for that option, and there could be persons who would have done it in error as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nevada, bringing you in here, you've heard some commentary on the occupational issues with the general grants. That deadline has been extended to April 30. Any comments from you? Any recommendations from SMEs?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say many people did exactly what you raised just now, Rochelle, which is just because of the complication of the other one and some of the barriers and things. The taxi drivers have had the least, from what we've heard, the least amount because the PPV was already very much in place. The others were more complicated, and again, their processes, have appeared not as easy as the eGOV portal system. Would it be fantastic if the eGOV portal system or something like it actually pretend across the entire ecosystem of trying to get registered? Because right now, all the registration processes in many of these things are complicated because they often involve multi-departmental, multi-ministry involvement. And remember, you've got to get your police thing done first, then the health inspector has to come, but he has to come in time so before your police certificate expires. So the act of trying to do multiply complicated things at the same time and then hoping that they all align so that you can get registered is also what's making it frustrating for some of the SMEs.
Yeah.
But certainly, as we always say, persistence is key. And even with those now for the general grant, in the 15 days, 14 days left, to try and keep pushing and to make sure that you become part of the registered system and be recognized is absolutely going to be critical. Not only for now, but remember, we are not sure when this entire pandemic is going to end. So what I keep telling people is, don't even worry so much about, even if you miss the April 30th deadline, for whatever reason. This may not, and then everybody said, well, I missed my time. No. This is one of the first things that the government has done in terms of being able to support the effort. And the issue is, we don't know how long this is going to take. So if there is another benefit coming later on, you do not want to be in the same position that you are now with your registration incomplete. So what we've been saying to people is, even if your other registration things will not meet the deadline of the CARE program now, don't let that stop you. Keep pushing So that if something else comes down the line, in addition, there are other reasons to be registered, but even holding off on that. But if something else comes down the line, you are already in place, as opposed to trying to rush and get things done again. So we're trying to tell people, don't bother, can't bother, we can't do this. No, this is not the time to do that. Get yourself acknowledged, get yourself known, get yourself registered.
Yeah. Right. So viewers, that's one of the points and for businesses that we have actually been promoting, the importance of registration of the business. And as we can see, we had the bankers here 2 weeks ago, and one of the key things was, is your business registered? Is it recognized as a small business for you to be able to access certain benefits? And this has come up again now with the government benefits. So whether or not you meet the deadline, the importance still is to be counted. So Maurice, one of the things, and I just mentioned Maurice. Maurice is the CEO of eGOV. And we also have John Thompson, who is the program director for the COVID care program. So Maurice.
Sorry, Rochelle, if it don't mind, I just want to give a correction to the figure. For the general grants, it's actually 18,000.
18,000?
18, yes.
But the majority is in PPV.
That's correct.
Yeah, but 18,000 is quite a substantial amount. Yeah. So going through the building of this system, and in fact, both of you gentlemen, I want you to comment on this point.
Right.
As you're going through, so on one hand, we've found multi-government agencies coming together. Yep. And they had to come together so that we were able to come up with a system for this whole process and the requirements. So we do know that multi-government agencies can come together in a relatively short period of time to successfully get a process in place. But going through the process, and even with the issues with registration and the information that we're trying to capture, are we just doing this as a COVID matter, or are we seeing a bigger picture and a bigger end game that we can now use this information that we've captured and the systems that we've put in place so that we actually get a momentum going? I see Maurice shaking his head first, so I'm going to start with you, Maurice.
Right. So we recognize very early, looking at the requirements of the system, and how it is that we have these different modules and building blocks. And we try to take a deliberate approach to say, not just look at this as a COVID-19 intervention, but also design it in a way that certainly is something that could actually grow into something bigger. And what we really have done, if you look at it, we have put in place a payment platform, basically, that accepts a request for payment or an application for payment. It goes through a verification process, validation, both at the person who's applying as well as the information that they would have put in vis-a-vis your banking information.
Yes.
That will also, once validated, that will move on into what we call payment processing. And during payment processing, obviously payments get batched in some form. There's an approval, and then it moves on for disbursement, for direct deposit or for pickup from a remittance company.
So what we actually have is not just a COVID thing, a COVID program, but a government payment portal that can be utilized and actually built out even bigger.
That's correct.
Okay. So John, from your perspective, when you are looking at the various agencies that have been able to come together to get this system going, we would have recognized a few gaps and some issues with even TPD co-registration, etc. Is there another team that's even looking at some of these gaps to say, in the future, when some of this pandemic simmers down a bit, these are some of the things that we think need to be put in place so that we have a smoother system?
Yes, one of the big challenges we've had is not having the data in place for the occupation, so to speak, the market vendors and so on. And that is something that the responsible agencies must know that they must now do a better job of. If they register someone, they must have a unique TRN that's valid for persons. That has been a substantial challenge on the project. You know, persons were registered just with name. The care system is
also persons were registered just with name, but no
unique identifier.
No.
So just as how there is the need for a national identification system For business operations or for individuals now, there is the need to have a unique identifier because what the care system does is when you enter your TRN, it makes a call to the tax systems and it looks for that TRN to see if you are eligible.
If are you?
Precisely.
Yeah. Okay.
And it also makes a call into the TPDCO database to see that that TRN exists for that RAF captain. And that is fundamentally, the agencies need to understand, you know, as they say, never waste a crisis.
Yes.
Now, what we see is many agencies are trying to get their act together.
Okay.
They now need to recognize that, you know, going forward, it's important that for every record, there's a unique identifier and it's in the format that we can work with. Interestingly also, what I think is going to come out of this project is the citizens have a different service level expectation. Persons they now see how something can be done with the click of a button on the phone.
Because I'm going to tell you the truth, John and Maurice, when I heard it was coming out, I was doubtful. I thought it was going to be a process that you start 12 a.m. and on midnight the next day, you know, finish with the process.
Right.
But apparently, the system has been simple enough and utilized technology and mobile so that just about anybody could access.
Yeah, there are two fundamental things to project success. One, the project owner. In this case, the Honorable Minister Nigel Clark was very hands-on, up to testing this system, very hands-on, 2-3 o'clock calls in the morning. You know, it happened because someone had the vision and was able to.
So the Minister of Finance owned the project.
Oh yes,
those still apply for any project.
That's
so,
correct.
You know, that's the number one rule for project success. The project sponsor or owner has to be there when you need them and has to make sure all the resources, all the parties pulled together. And so luckily we had that in place. But as I said, second factor is what you have to look at your customer demographics. And we recognize that the man in the corner in retirement, St. Elizabeth or somewhere, would not be able to get a document to go upload it to do an application. So we had to come with a solution that we know could work on the phone without the person having to attach a certificate or something, and that would be seamless. We actually defined a performance of being able to complete an application in 30 seconds.
Yes.
And we were able to achieve that. So again, we had the sponsor who drove us, and we looked at the customer in terms of what would work for them.
Okay. So the proof always is in the receipt of the funds.
Oh yes.
So we know that we have a first.
Rochelle.
Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to. It's very interesting when you made the comment about Nigel, because some of the work that we have done at PSOJ, the issues of a successful project is this, and this is what we tend not to do. One, you speak about this idea of what we call at PSOJ fit for purpose, right? Recognizing who the customer is and whatever the system is has to deliver to that customer. So you can't stay pie in the sky in the theory, but have to have a full recognition as to who the platform is trying to serve. Secondly, the idea of a single owner. And that single owner who isn't being passed on from department to department. And that single owner needs to be both high level, to consider strategic, but also detailed enough that they will sit and do the test themselves. That is crucial for any big project that we do in Jamaica, whether private company or government. What has happened to us in the past is that we don't have a single owner end to end. And somebody starts it, it gets passed on. Everybody's too high level, not enough detail. And not enough project definition around fit for purpose. Who is it designed to serve? Is it language and done in a way that is for that group? So kudos to Nigel that
the Honorable Minister
idea of owning it end to end and designing fit for purpose.
Yes. So so Nevada meant Dr. the Honorable Nigel Clark, who is our Minister of Finance. So commendations to the Minister for the project ownership, because that is actually one of the key things that we do find, that the projects are not owned end to end.
That's correct.
But we have some viewers that have said, okay, well, I have uploaded, it took me 24 seconds, hurrah. Am I going to get my monies next week? I got a reference number. when I get a reference number, what does that mean? Does that mean that I am assured a payment next week, or is that a first qualifier that goes then into an operational process? Can you tell us, our viewers, a bit, after you've gotten the reference number, so those persons who had a TRN issue would not have gotten a reference number.
No.
So you didn't have a TRN issue, you got a reference number. What is happening in the background?
Okay, so there are two activities that ensue. One is we are now moving towards the qualifying, the eligibility activity. Your application is now in, and you got in because you had a valid TRN.
Yes.
Now we need to see if you in fact are qualified based on the defined eligibility criteria.
Oh.
So if a RAF captain had put in an application and he got his application reference number, next week when we run the eligibility run, we will check on the TPTO data to see if this RAF captain is registered.
Yeah.
So that's in principle how the eligibility works, and it works for each component. For the compassionate grant, the criteria was defined as not being in formal employment. What we will do, we will take the TRN and we will check on the tax systems to see if they were employed.
Okay.
So that's the stage we are at, because we are actually will be doing payments next week as we have committed to do.
So payments will be done next week?
For some components. And I'll explain it a little bit.
Okay.
Before we get to that, I'm just going to ask Maurice to comment on the bank validation activities that we want to know, because we are now moving towards you can call the second stage of the program. The validation, the eligibility, and then moving into the payments. So Maurice will comment about the bank validation.
We've done so we get the first step is you
capture the application.
Capture the application, you get a reference number.
Precisely.
And what's happening next is the validation process. Because Jamaica, we get like nervous because if we go past the exam.
Right.
So tell us about the validation process.
Okay, so for each program, you would see, before you would have selected your program, you'd have looked at what the eligibility or the different criteria for that program. So if you chose...
So Maurice, if I chose compassionate grant and you find out that I was in
that
fact
you are
working,
actually employed,
you won't get it.
You won't be able, you won't qualify for the payment.
Okay.
So what we did, as you said, the process would have started with the validation of your verification of your TRN. So that would have gotten you into the system, given you a reference code. The eligibility runs are now being done to look at to see if you are actually eligible for that particular program. Simultaneously, what we're also doing is looking at your banking information that you would have entered, because that information is also going to be verified with your financial institution that you would have selected. What I would encourage persons to do now at this time is just to log back into the system to confirm that the information that you entered for your banking information is in fact correct. Because it's going to cause a delay if we do that verification and it doesn't, it's not successful. Then you'll have to go back in
Maurice,
and that will...
Maurice,
yes,
on that point, we actually have heard, especially situations with women who the TRN is associated with one name, but the bank account, because of when they open the bank account, is associated with a different last name. So that's, based on what you said, that's likely to also create a problem, because the second validation is not going to work. Is that true?
That is correct. Because as it is right now, for this system, because it's fully automated,
and it's linked in with the banking
It's linked in with the banking system. So all the commercial banks that are supported on the platform, there's an electronic interface with those banks.
So this is actually a very important point for our viewers.
Yes.
So the fact of getting your reference number does not automatically mean that you will receive a payment next week. Exactly. In fact, the recommendation is that you go back into the system to double check that banking information.
That's
and
correct.
Some of us, the banking, we use a different last name for the banking, or we did have a double barrel name, or some of the documents have a dash between the name. And we need to actually go back to ensure that the TRN name and the banking information name matches.
Correct.
Because then you would need to make the requisite adjustments.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but we will actually, the process that we are going to execute later this week will notify persons if the bank account is invalid. So they actually would do that, have to be to go ahead and do that. We will be able to establish whether the bank account is
but you might as well go check too. Just
but yes,
it will save time.
It will save some time.
It will save some time.
It doesn't hurt.
Okay.
It will save some time.
So in terms of that validation process, we have a validation process with the category of person that you say you are.
Yes.
Yep.
And so that is whether you are in fact unemployed, a pensioner, in tertiary education, barber, hairdresser.
Correct.
Because the system now speaks to the various
All
registration
of the different
systems
That's correct.
Systems.
to validate these things.
That's
and
correct.
then post that, there is still the matter of your bank account.
Yes.
Now there's also where persons can direct payment to a remittance agency.
Yes, so
That's an option.
recognizing again the demographics in terms of fit for purpose, for compassionate grant and general grant, we gave the options of receiving the benefit through the remittance, because we recognize that demographic may not have a bank account.
Yes.
So yes, that option is there.
That option.
Okay. Now, in terms of the
Sorry, Rochelle, one question also that we've heard. A situation where, for example, somebody's mother, who is a stay-at-home, is the one that's eligible. And they've actually got the application and said that she's supposed to be paid. But she, unfortunately, is not going to be able to go physically and actually retrieve the money because she hasn't left the house in, 5 years, 6 years. Is there any facility for that, or that person would not be able to collect the money in that situation, whether from a remittance company or somewhere else?
So yes, we do have that question comes a few times. What we are said to people is, in general, you should have a joint bank account if you are in that position.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
so it is a situation that it is what it is, because the person who is registered on that bank account has to also be, so whoever makes the application has to have a bank account associated with them with their name on it.
Yeah. And hopefully the able person, partner can go on and
okay, so in that situation, the person who has not left the house in quite a while couldn't ask that the payment be made into my account.
No.
So that is very important.
Right. There's
for
no
persons
third-party payments will be done.
Save for remittance.
Well, for the remittance, again, it is also the person who is applying, they will have to produce a picture ID.
So they
along with the reference number and other details. And this is really the policy of the remittance companies.
Yes.
I don't think, unless they're going to support a third-party payment, it's going to be very difficult for someone else to go and pick up that funds.
Okay, so I hear my viewers now asking the question. So for instance, I've chosen a remittance.
Correct.
We do have a lockdown enforced now, or perchance I am a pensioner and it is recommended that persons of a certain age that they stand the yard. Now, in the event that there is any extension of this lockdown, has there been anything built into the system that will facilitate persons being able to retrieve these funds, or will they just have to wait for an opening?
So if you have transferred to your bank account, that's
not a problem.
Not an issue.
That's assuming that you use online banking.
Well, and that's just not a COVID-19 care issue.
That's a issue.
That's a general issue.
Yeah.
I don't know what the collection terms are for the remittance in terms of how long.
I suspect that it will be within 2 weeks you have to pick up. If not less. Yeah.
So viewers, just to reintroduce our guests, if you're just joining us, on Zoom we have Nevada Powe, who is the lead project architect for the PSOJ Access to Finance Panel program, and we are joined by Maurice Barnes, who is the CEO of eGOV, and eGOV is the
ICT.
Yeah, because we've been talking like we know what eGOV is.
Yeah.
Yes. So eGOV is the
ICT services
center
provider for the
entire
government of Jamaica.
And Maurice's team would have been integral to the building of the system, the portal, the ICT system that facilitates the care program. And we also have the program director of the government's care program, Mr. John Thompson. Now, we have had persons ask questions such as, I'm a small farmer and I'm not seeing something specific for me, John.
Well, yes, that the farmers has been one of the many questions I have received. There actually is a provision for farmers through, there was a 200 million allocation to MICAF to purchase crops for farmers. Outside of that, the only other way to benefit directly for a farmer is, as an individual, is the compassionate grant. If they run a big, large registered farm, there is a small business grant that gives 100,000 benefit. But specifically on the small business, the criteria that most of them are not able to meet is they have not done a PAYE return for at least one employee. And that's a criteria that many businesses in Jamaica, they may do a lot in terms of revenue, 30, 40 million, but there is no formal PAYE return. And that is one of the requirements. Just to demonstrate that you have done a PAYE return for at least a single employee.
For a single employee. And remember, the PAYE is the
payroll returns, yeah.
For your employees. So those payroll returns with the NHT payments,
Precisely.
education tax, your income tax, etc. So that now would affect employees in terms of benefiting set cash.
No. So yeah, it does affect them because set cash, if you were laid off from a company that had revenues of 40 million, but who had not been making formal payroll returns, unfortunately, you would be disenfranchised. Because set cash, to benefit from set cash, your employer has to submit what's called a P45 document as evidence that you have been laid off either temporarily or permanently.
Okay.
And so in that case, that employer would have already have a practice of submitting payroll returns.
Yeah. And for our
yeah, that itself, Rochelle, as I was saying before, that itself is another issue, obviously, for many of the people who we talk to in the SME sector. In addition, often businesses who are under 50 million do a lot of things with contractors because they don't want to bring people on permanently. But remember last week we talked about somebody who is called a contractor, but really de facto is an employee because they're only on up periodically. Again, you have this, there's so many anomical situations in the Jamaican context that they fall through the cracks because they don't exactly fall in line with how the thing is defined. So definitely the issue of not being able to apply for the set cash, although in many ways they are in theory eligible, but in fact they end up not being eligible because of the specifics around how eligibility is
because
defined.
they would not exist in the government system as
Precisely.
an employee, which is the definition that is used here.
Exactly.
And we actually have, and I just want to bring in some of our viewers. We have a comment here from Carleen Daly who says, I'm disappointed that a 17-year-old college student is unable to apply. Maurice, because you're chuckling, you have to answer that because this is something you've heard.
That's a policy, yes, because that's the policy. 18 and over.
18 and over.
Yes.
So someone who is 17 years old would fall under PATH program?
Not necessarily. So
unless they were on PATH program.
So, you know, the rules we have to work with rules when we create programs and define systems. And officially 18 years old is what we know is really the benchmark in terms of being on your own, so to speak.
Okay, I see here Cheryl Gentle says that I've been unsuccessful in applying for the compassionate grant for my mother. It's saying that her date of birth, name and TRN don't match.
again, you know, it's quite surprising maybe that persons do not know the birth date they use at the time of TRN registration. My recommendation is if she can get her hand on the TRN card,
Yes.
that has the exact first spelling of the first and last name. But I suspect it's the birth date that most persons are not recalling. It happens, you know. By my estimate, about 1% of the applicants are having this problem.
But this has really unearthed an issue with
the informality of how we operate.
Yes.
So, you know, persons need to know now, as was said by Nevada. Make sure you formalize yourself going forward. If you are employed, your employer is supposed to give you what's called a P24 at the end of the year,
Yes.
to show you that what has happened with your deductions. In fact, when we were defining the set cash element of the program, we had a feeling there to ask persons the name of their employer. But we recognize that there are many persons who work, particularly in the tourism sector, who do not know the exact name of the company they work with. They know the brand name, but they don't know the registered name where the TRN. So again, fit for purpose, we had to give consideration to some of those things. And that happens. I don't want to call names, but persons work with certain hotels that the brand name is known, but the company is registered as something else.
Okay. And I think just to again reiterate the point that if you recognize that there are some issues in your current registration, and let's just start from the basic, with your TRN and your name, date of birth, and your TRN matching. Don't just use this as a throw your hands in the air, this woe be me. You need to go and get this sorted out. If you're able to find the original TRN card, which I know a lot of us, I don't know where mine is, but what we would need to do is to get the birth certificate and to make whatever amendments to our TRN information, because evidently this is information that's going to be used widely in the future.
Correct.
So you want to ensure your TRN is sorted out.
Especially if you got married and you have been using a new name subsequent to how you registered. That's a big challenge.
And in fact,
and hyphenated names
and
as well.
hyphenated names. So it's very important that you determine what your name is. So for married women, if they're adopting their husband's name, that the adoption of the name on its own does not change your name.
Precisely.
So when you get married, the marriage
Exactly.
actually, it's almost, the marriage is a deed poll technically, but you need to ensure that your passport information, your driver's license information, and most importantly, your TRN information. So one of the things I always say is whatever name is on your TRN, that's your name. Daniel Spencer asked a very interesting question. I'd like to know why airline workers are not included as part of the tourism industry. John?
Airline workers, I can't say specifically. We worked with the list as was provided by TPDCO. If they are working and they were laid off by the employer, so set cash is not just for tourism sector.
Exactly.
Set cash is for all sectors of business.
And I think that was an important clarification because persons have been looking at it as just for tourism.
The best cash is for tourism. So if you're working with Fly Night airline and you were laid off, you can qualify for set cash. Hopefully your former employer had been making your payroll returns.
I'm seeing an interesting comment and from Mickey Meeks. Mickey Meeks says, it is not the case where people don't know their date of birth. Seemingly, there was a glitch in the system as several persons that I know had put in the correct date of birth, but it backdated it to another date of birth. How will the government go about? So we have the head of eGOV right here, who will be looking to address this glitch. But is there in fact a glitch in the system? Was there a glitch in the system?
When the system initially came out, there was a glitch in how it was displaying the date of birth after it would have accepted your date of birth.
Yeah.
Right. So in terms of the validation, it was in fact validating your date of birth. But then if you went back to review it, there were some cases, a few cases which would have displayed the date of birth. I think it would have been off by 1 day. This is not information which is going to be stored or updated in any system.
Okay.
The care system just uses your date of birth just to validate you.
Just to validate.
Right. So persons don't need to be worried that we're changing your date of birth or it's showing the incorrect date of birth. You just enter your correct date of birth to get validated with a TAJ,
Yes.
and it's fine. And your date of birth will not be utilized as part of the application processing or payout.
Okay.
So if the system was displaying it incorrectly, we have since corrected it, by the way, and but persons can be rest assured that they don't need to worry about the date of birth.
Okay. I see another interesting question about the application period ending today. So Janelle Wallace says, why is the application period ending today? Do we have an application period ending today?
I think there has been some
just
consideration to see how we can, if the funding is in place to cover the high level of applications that have been received.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if a formal policy has come out and it's subsequent to coming here.
But there was something that was in fact.
But yeah, so we actually have to evaluate on a daily basis based on what we see coming, because the program has been extremely successful. Who would have thought that we would have gotten 164,000 applications in day one?
In 1 day.
So unfortunately, I can't say much about that at this juncture sitting here.
Okay. What we're also seeing is a lot of persons are asking the questions.
Sorry, Rochelle.
One second,
the issue of the capacity, which I guess is to Maurice, because some people said they have been, and I can imagine 160,000 applying in 1 day. Some people said they have been trying for every day and have simply not been able to get through, either on the phone or on the system. And I can imagine numbers. The question is, give us some sense of the capacity or something that where people could have, maybe should they be going on trying to get on at 4 in the morning or some such thing.
Yeah, is there a thing that the system has like a lot of traffic at certain times and limitation with capacity?
Okay, well right now I think we have sufficient capacity. The day that we felt it would have been the first
April
day
9th.
on the 9th. At one point, maybe about 11 o'clock, we had in excess of 12,000 persons accessing it simultaneously, which would have caused the system to slow down naturally. We had put in place a lot of provisions for increasing bandwidth as well as the load. So we did put things in place in anticipation. As it is right now, and based on the monitoring that we've been doing, between the hours of like about 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. is probably the time when the site is least accessed. But applications come in at every hour. Every hour, so it's 24 hours. So the issues of the access, I think we wouldn't have been getting much complaints. Certainly day one was quite a challenging time for us because, persons, so if we're saying over 160, then we could just imagine
that throughout
some persons who wouldn't have gotten on in terms of how many persons would have attempted.
Because in fact, just to mention a post by the Honorable Minister, Dr. Nigel Clark, he actually posted that as at 2 p.m. today, the CARE program received over 388,000 compassionate grant applications. Let me just jump into this part. We will now transition towards validating and processing for payment. Applications for the compassionate grant will close as at 5:01 p.m. today, April 16th. And he's heartened by the number of persons who have applied. So the compassionate grant does in fact end today. Close today. I'm seeing a question here. How would the SET or the SME grants support businesses who have contract staff? This is a question from Claudine Tracy.
Contracts.
Unfortunately, again, because the criteria is it's in terms of eligibility is largely having employment.
Yes.
So people must remember this program is not a general welfare program.
Yes.
It was designed to assist persons who were laid off, formerly employed.
Yeah.
The compassionate grant came on the table because we recognize that many persons, there's a demographic, a man on the corner, so to speak, who would not have been part of a formal system.
And the program is in fact called the COVID Allocation of Resources for Employees Care Program. And a very interesting question by Claudine, because one of the things we dealt with last week, viewers, was the different categories of workers. So we have persons who are in fact employees, and this system goes even a little further because some persons may technically be employees, but no taxes had in fact been filed for them.
Yeah.
So it's not just the definition of employees, but also whether or not the tax system recognizes that PAYE had been filed for you.
Yeah.
So this is actually a good time for what we'd like to call cleanup by certain businesses. Louis Nordy asked the questions: will persons who are self-employed earning $15,000 fortnightly but have been delayed payment in tax be denied compassionate grant?
No,
they will.
So remember, compassionate grant is really open to anyone who does not have a formal pay.
So that's almost like the catch-all.
So it's a catch-all, there may be over 1.5 million people in Jamaica.
But the thing with the catch-all is that if you're caught in the PAYE system, the catch-all won't help you.
No, it won't help.
Because
if you're in the PAYE system,
you won't be validated.
You're not going to be able to benefit.
But the important thing is to recognize that compassionate grant was created to be fit for purpose with some of the realities of our demographics.
Precisely.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I'm seeing a very interesting question. We were discussing this earlier from Charmaine Jarrett Aarons. Who can collect on behalf of sick pensioners? I mean, know anything about that already.
And that's from the remittance companies?
Well, so
it would necessarily.
Yeah, because it would be dependent, because that pensioner would have their own bank account. This is more than care program itself.
This is system.
This is really banking system requires that what's on your TRN is also what's on the bank account.
Yes.
And that's just a rule that we had to abide for. This is really an opportune time for persons to come into the system to get electronic, so to speak.
Because the reality.
Rochelle. One of the things that, as you well know, as a part of the PSOJ project, we have been pushing for this notion of the tiered KYC. Because it is
and for those who don't know, Nevada, could you just remind our viewers what KYC is? We don't want to talk over people's head.
So KYC, which means technically know your customer. If anybody has tried to open or has opened a bank account in the last X number of years, 5, 10 years, right? They will know that from the customer perspective, it feels quite onerous. And you sometimes start fussing the bank because how them running around for the whole heap of things. Much of this is not because of the bank, but because of regulatory things that Jamaica has signed on to, that there has to be a lot of knowledge around, one, who you are, and two, where do you get the money? Concerns being, are you in illegal things, are you supporting terrorism, and so on, right? Who are you? Where do you get the money? Now, many of these situations where people don't have bank accounts are what you call low-risk people. Grandma who live in St. Mary, who grow like a Tinker market, should not support no terrorism. However, at the banks, they look for the same standard of information for everyone. So one of the things that we have been pushing for the PSOJ is this whole notion of a tiered know your customer. If it's grandma who is very unlikely to be selling drugs and financing terrorists, could we collect from her less information in order to open their account? It is unfortunate that at this time, with the need now to support so many people, that we did not already have that in place to be able to
actually do much. And if you found a problem on the system, have that problem addressed now. You also have to be checking on your banking information to ensure that all of your documentation is in the same name. So some persons do in fact need to go to the bank to ensure that the name on their banking information is updated. It's always also an opportune time for persons who need to go through the formalization process with bank accounts, etc., to have that done. But very importantly, it is an opportunity for our SMEs to ensure that they are formalized, that the relevant tax documents are in fact filed, because we are seeing the repercussions of that now. I'm seeing an interesting question from Shakila Lester. I applied for a compassionate grant because I was having an issue applying for the set cash benefit. After it went through, I cancelled the compassionate and tried the set cash, but it is saying that my TRN has already been used. Is it possible for me to apply for the correct one? So the person would have applied for compassionate grant, sought to cancel it to apply for set.
Right.
And when they went into the system says, no, this TRN has been used already.
Okay. I would first ask them to go back in and see if they can find that application and try and cancel it. Because I'm not sure if it was actually cancelled.
Okay. So they do actually need to go back in.
Yes, and try and cancel it. And you should be able to apply for the set after that.
Okay. So
if there's a problem, then I think you'll have to report that problem.
Okay, so as we mentioned problems, in the event, so let's start with an issue where you got a reference number, but there is now a validation issue, your banking information. The system is going to send you a note to say there's a validation. Now, when I get that validation thing there, now, what I must do?
You're going to go back. There's a feature called track your application. You'll go back into track, and the system will allow you to edit the banking information.
Okay.
And from there, you can put in the correct, and then it will get revalidated.
And suppose I am unable to correct it before that first payment is made. Can I go in subsequently and that payment is made at a later date?
Yes, that's correct.
John?
So if you don't get a payment, if you miss the first payment round, yes, you will end up auditing there. Once you're validated, eligible,
you will get your payment.
You will get your payment.
So, on this first run, if your bank account is not valid, your payment record will not go into the payment batch.
Okay.
But you are qualified to receive a payment, so you will still have an opportunity to receive it in the subsequent month.
Yeah.
So what actually closes off today is the compassionate grant.
That's what I get.
Yes,
the application.
yes, based on what
I
you're
think
saying,
another issue that our viewers have is, I suppose my work is terminated in April. Can I make an
payments? Payment in April is for those who would have been laid off in March. Payment in May is for those laid off in April, and so on. May June for those laid off in May.
In May.
So if you are laid off in May, an application can be put in May. Once your employer uploads the P45 as evidence, you will receive the payment in June.
Okay. So. Some persons have been asking in respect of the P45, because the P45 was usually issued at the termination of employment. Has an adjustment
so yes,
been
so
made
we
to the
recognize
P45
that COVID-19 is a unique situation, so the regulations were changed to recognize temporary laid off.
Okay.
And you are defined as being temporarily laid off if you are laid off 3 months or less.
Okay. And in terms of the SO1 form, can you tell us a little bit, because some people, this is the first time I'm really hearing about it.
So the SO1 is for employers, for the best cash component. The SO1 is evidence of you having employees, of maintaining employees. So persons who are applying for the best cash benefit they can be paid if they demonstrate that they have kept on employees. And the SO1 is evidence of maintaining employees who earn below 1.5 million.
Okay.
But again, best cash is specifically for TPDCO registered entities. It was designed to try and encourage the tourism business practitioners to keep on employees.
Yes. Okay.
Unfortunately, it kind of came after most of the persons were laid off. So that's why
because the business is closed.
Precisely.
Okay.
But if you still have maintained employees and they're earning less than 1.5 and you are TPDCO registered, there is an opportunity to earn a benefit.
Okay. So in terms of, I'm seeing here for small businesses, can we still file taxes online to be eligible for the grant?
No, I think there was a specific date of December 31st, 2019 to have filed a PAYE return.
Yeah. So much of those regular tax requirements, you would have had to have met those taxation
precisely for small businesses.
For small businesses. And this is just a reminder too that as Nevada had mentioned earlier, it is critical that we recognize some of the deficiencies and some of the issues we've had accessing some of these grants, and we fix those issues. So the persons who are going through the TPDCO application, we do recognize, I see Duncan here mentioning the complexity of the process, because there are several arms to it. There's a police record, etc.
You mean for the occupation?
For the TPDCO.
Oh, the TPDCO.
Yeah. Nevada, I want to bring you in at this time. I see, and bring you in terms of some recommendations that have been coming in from SMEs. But just generally, I just want to mention a recommendation here. I know the Honorable Minister has already indicated that the Compassionate Grant has been closed, but of course some of our viewers are asking whether or not an extension could be considered. In terms of the SME community, Nevada, could you just quickly give us a few recommendations that have come in that the PSOJ may also be recommending that the government could consider?
Well, this is probably what we say more broadly addressed to the Ministry of Finance, not necessarily about the CARE program. One of the things that we keep hearing, for example, that is the issue of SME receivables owed by the government. And to the extent that one of the ways in which the government could help create some liquidity is to release some of their payables, pay some of the payables that are due to the small business. That would sort of help in the struggle at this time. Again, it's money that they're actually owed, but may not actually be owed at this particular time. That is one. The other thing that we're hearing from the SMEs is with respect to the GCT and any other taxes or things that could be actually due now. Recognizing, especially if it was an SME who was a regular payer, but now they're in a crunch situation. What has been interesting, we have told SMEs to make a note to the tax office and make it identify that they're going to have trouble paying GCT owed now or other tax owed now. Interestingly, what the tax office has said is, we as tax office, do not yet have any instruction, but we will make a note on your file that you have made this request. So based on that, it suggests that there may be some kind of opening. So we encourage, even though there's been nothing official yet, for SMEs to actually at least register the fact that I have been, again, a regular taxpayer from before, but right now, given the fact that I didn't have time to plan, I'm trying to hold on money to pay food for my children and stuff, we're just going to now see if I can get some hold off on that. And those were some of the other things that kept going. The other thing that people said with respect to the SET program is the idea of using other
criteria.
variables. For example, if the employee had pay stubs or regular deposits. So in fact, if the employer had not sent over the statutory payments, if the employee could actually show that, look, I have been at a job for a period of time, and the
deductions were actually made.
The tax was actually taken was taken from me as a possibility. The other thing that came up, again with respect to the TBDQ, because of the difficulties of applying, is whether or not a business could be considered, even if they were not registered. But what you're really trying to find out is whether or not the business is a real business or somebody running a scam. And the issue is, if I, for example, have had 5 years of TripAdvisor reviews, or I have been working with Expedia for 10 years, or Airbnb for 10 or for 5 years, right? And I can show that I actually have an account with Airbnb. Every year they send me money, or you can look at my TripAdvisor reviews, and for 5 years I have many customer reviews, that those are also indicators that I'm a legitimate tourist business. Again, it was easier to register for TripAdvisor and start getting reviews than it was for TBDQ. So the question is, would there be any consideration for broadening some of the things that creates eligibility, especially from the SME perspective? The grant, compassionate grants seem to have gone very well, but the bar was not as high. The SMEs are caught between a rock and a hard place with some of these things, and there's just a hope, an ask, a plea that we might consider other ways to show eligibility.
Okay. John, are you able to make a comment on that?
So fundamentally, we are in a situation where we are in the social distancing era. We have 500,000 applications to process. It has to be totally electronic, and we have been able to do that. You know, this is a situation where we will not have any human intervention in making any review of an application. No. It's all automated.
Where systems are talking.
Our systems are talking to each other. The policies have been defined. And at this juncture, that's really the only way this program will be able to work. We won't be able to go and look at a manual review or something that's not structured, that doesn't have a TRN that we can call to get a feedback on. So unfortunately, that's what
that's where we are now.
This program, yes.
Okay.
There is no human intervention from you have put in your application, from the bank validation, from the eligibility run, to the disbursement into your account. It's all automated. It's actually transformational, and it does give you a view into how business will work in the future. And
I actually think, John, that is a very key point. And this is John Thompson, who is the program director for the government's CARE program. And I think, John, that was actually a good point that you are wrapping up on, that this is actually a new paradigm. So we are facing a situation where we're used to a certain amount of informality, and we hope that somebody can get it done in the background. But no, we have social distancing, and the systems are speaking to each other. So we also have to recognize where the systems are not recognizing us, that we don't exist in any system, and we need to have that addressed, because this is going to be a part of the new paradigm. I think from the small business perspective, and certainly we have the CEO of eGOV. As the system is built out, recognizing the importance of fit for purpose and some of the realities of our reality, can we also, is there room in it? I'm no ICT person, but I say that we can do all kinds of things. To build into the system some of these other mechanisms, such as even a TripAdvisor review, that those things are linked into the system, that we could use it as an opportunity to build in some of these systems.
Yes, and you're correct. This is quite an opportune time for us to look, because in this particular engagement, as John said, you know, it is sort of a multi-company agency entity to pull all of this data together. And we recognize a lot of gaps and weaknesses. And I think we need to seize the opportunity now to see how can we improve on those in terms of going forward. And that's exactly what we're going to set about to do.
So gentlemen, we are grateful that you could join us today. We know that you are both very busy and you were able to provide quite a bit of clarity. We will also supply some of the comments that have come in from our viewers, because some of them are very useful too, as we're looking to build out the project and the system. We started out with COVIDCast looking at some of the recommendations, general recommendations for SMEs. We have had the banking community talking about the COVID relief packages. Last week we delved into some of the issues of our labor laws and managing our workforce in this pandemic. And this week we had John Thompson, who is a program director of the government's CARE program, and Maurice Barnes, who is the CEO of eGOV, which is the government's ICT arm. We have had both gentlemen talking to us about the build out of the project, explaining the verification process. We're now in a validation process and we're expected to get some payments next week. So please, we are looking forward to you joining us again next week for another episode of COVIDCastJA. Joining us from Zoom. I know you miss seeing him physically, but it's his social distancing time, so we never have enough space. So we have Nevada Powe, who is a regular on our program, the lead project architect for the PSOJ Access to Finance Panel program. Next week, we are going to be looking at some of the small businesses who have pivoted, and pivoting meaning that businesses have recognized where they're able to use some of the resources they have to switch things up and are actually able to thrive. So we're hearing now some of the innovations and opportunities. So please join us next week, Thursday, for another episode of COVIDCastJA. And once again, we just like to thank our guests, John Thompson and Maurice Barnes, and Nevada Powe, who is joining us by Zoom. So see you all next week again for another episode of COVIDCastJA.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you.